Hello, I'm Jon Atack. This is
Sam Atack.
and he's
Yuval Laor.
yeah. And first of all, we're going to talk about this helpful public safety leaflet that has been handed out, I'm told, by people in biohazard suits going into stores and depositing great boxes of this paper. And
it's published by?
Well, it says for more information and to download this booklet, visit Scientology.org /stay well.
Courtesy of Church
Scientology International. So that's where it came from. And I'm not going to get into the bulk of it. It's pretty, wash your hands, wear a mask, don't rub your face. It's not really profound stuff. But introduction, why prevention is important. So could you read that for me?
Yes. Some diseases are said to be caused by harmful bacteria or viruses, commonly called germs. Some diseases are said to be caused by harmful bacteria or viruses.
And this is true, some diseases are said to be
said
caused.
to be.
Right? But the phrase "said to me" stopped me a little bit because it made me think of this other statement. Now, that's just something that's being handed out. So, whatever, they don't have, it's not scripture. This is scripture by their own absolute statement. What's more, it's the primary scripture. This is Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, published, so we're told, on the 9th of May, 1950. By
year zero, according
year
to
zero, Cambodia, the year of living dangerously. Just how many physical errors are psychosomatic? This is Lafayette Ronald Hubbard talking. Just how many physical errors are psychosomatic depends upon how many conditions the body can generate out of the factors in the engrams. Now, the engrams are his great discovery. These are moments of trauma while unconscious. And instructions from these are handed out to you unwittingly. You don't know about it. And they make you behave in funny ways. So it would appear that, according to Ron Hubbard, just how many physical errors are psychosomatic depends upon how many conditions the body can generate out of the factors in the engrams. So we have thousands of these engrams in the engram bank or reactive mind, and we don't know what they're up to. But anything that's said while they're unconscious might now react on you. So if somebody said, "Get out," then it would make you get out at some later point in your life.
Okay.
No, unconsciousness is also when you're asleep in this case?
This is a traumatic period of unconsciousness. So you've been knocked unconscious. And it underlies all, at this point he's claiming it underlies all psychological difficulties. He says that basically the human mind is like he calls it a computer, but really in 1950 that would have been what we call a calculator. And the number 7, and elsewhere the number 5, it depends which version of the scripture you read, is held down, and it's now being added into every calculation. So you work out everything wrong, basically. All your thoughts are now wrong because you've added the number 7 to them.
Yeah.
And that's Jesus, on the other hand, said when asked, how many times should you let people strike you? Would it be like 7 times? Would that be okay? And he said 7. And yea, even 70 times 7, which is 490. Well, it's 490 plus the, what is it? Now I've got it wrong. It's 539, isn't it? 7. No, you're right.
Oh.
70 times 7 would be 77 times 7, I think he says.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting wrong. She's 539. So it's the basis of all psychological difficulties, the engram, this unconsciousness, and forms its own little bank, apparently. For example, the common cold has been found to be psychosomatic. That means it doesn't have a physical origin, it has an origin in the mind. Clears do not get colds. A clear is somebody who's emptied out their bank of engrams and no longer has 7s held down in their calculator, so they think straight. He says all sorts of things about their abilities, about the high IQ and all sorts of things elsewhere in this book. But we're only interested, for the moment, in this particular idea. Clears, people who've achieved clarity and the ability.
The state of clear, yeah.
The state of clear. Clears do not get colds. Just what, if any, part the virus plays in the common cold is not known, but it is known that when engrams about colds are lifted, no further colds appear, which is a laboratory fact, not so far contradicted by 270 cases. I'd like to point out there that he's claiming...
It's a laboratory fact or a lobotomy fact?
Well, I did before, when we were talking before, I suggested it might have been to do with Labrador dogs, but because it's easy to get them mixed up with laboratories. I often do. I find myself taking the laboratory for a walk, you know.
Yeah.
But he's saying that it's a laboratory fact not so far contradicted by 270 cases. I've pointed this out frequently before, but I'm pointing it out again. He sometimes says 272, he sometimes says 273, but, you know, I'm not going to fight with that. 270 cases. That he is saying clearly here on the 9th of May 1950 that he has produced 270 clears, not one of whom has caught a cold. Now, in a letter a couple of months earlier, he claimed to have produced 40 clears, and he only had a couple of weeks after that before he started full-time writing this book. So in those 2 weeks, he had another 230 personally by his own work, which is pretty incredible. The common cold comes about usually from an engram which suggests it and which is confirmed by actual mucus present in another engram. I don't know what that means, because engrams are mental image pictures. How do you get snotty?
Yeah.
You've got snotty. You've got a snotty engram and a cold engram, and they get together. A number of germ diseases are predisposed and perpetuated by engrams. Tuberculosis is one, and I believe there's an outbreak of tuberculosis in Kazakhstan at the moment, which is quite...
No, tuberculosis is awful and kills many people to this day.
So we should be recommending Dianetics to people because it cures it. So I just want to, you know, just a little word about how to keep yourself and others well, which is the title of this. And a good way to do that is to not get involved with Scientology.
Well, there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, you have the notion of the engram, which makes you do things, right? Now, this takes parts of your own psychology, right? And otherize it. So it makes you feel like some of your thoughts are not you.
So you could have like an id and a superego.
Yeah, but they're all you. All of them are you.
Well, your active mind is you-ish.
Well, is it? It's engrams. You're trying to get rid of it. It messes up your thinking, and later you find out it's aliens. So but the way
we're all aliens, though. Within the theory, be fair, we are too.
Yeah, and snotty apparently.
Some of us have mucus aliens.
So the notion that in general, it is not a healthy thing to think that parts of your psychology are not you. It's all you.
What about your inner child?
Your little professor.
Well, it's still you. It's not someone. It's not another child. I guess it's you when you were a child.
But the problem is that it's so quiet that it might as well be an engram. And it's doing stuff to you that you don't know about. That's the bit of it, you know, the whole ear.
Which is, but also feeling like you're possessed by the devil, like the devil made you think certain thoughts and all that. It's all of this feeling that you're not coherent, united being. And of course, in reality, we're not, but we have the illusion that we are. And it's a very unhealthy to think that a part of your psyche is not actually you. So
no,
it's just not a recommended way to keep yourself and others well.
I agree with you absolutely. You're suggesting that somebody has what is fashionably called dissociative identity disorder these days, or did, which is a New Zealand word meaning dead, and that this is what used to be called multiple personality disorder, but now, according to the likes of Martha Stout, we all have dissociative identity disorder. Because
to a certain
I would
degree.
say I don't agree. It is not dissociative.
It's not dissociative. That's right. But we do have different personality and different circumstances. So we're different with our parents than we are with our friends.
Let's just get into this. Dissociative identity disorder does not mean having a variety of personae or presentations to the world.
That's right.
It means having separate entities driving your activities.
Yeah.
So
and it can be
there's
really,
no argument
really
about identity.
startling.
The argument is about the dissociation.
Yeah.
And you are so right that by positing a reactive mind, the R6 bank or what have you, as a hidden directing force inside you, you have been given a demon. You have been given this something. What interested me, and it took a long time to really get this, was that by believing the thing, you make it so. And so Scientologists come to the point where they do have reactive minds, because human beings are capable of believing any nonsense. And, you know, some are born great, some achieve greatness, some have greatness thrust upon them. I keep saying it, but it applies to everything. There is no, for example, psychotic illness that cannot be faked. So, and the problem is that somebody can fake it so well that they believe it too. So you get wacko things like Munchausen's by proxy, where you like other people to get surgery. You know? I mean, Munchausen's is one thing, you know, but Munchausen's by proxy, how do you do that? You know, for the sake of humanity, you offer up somebody else for sacrifice. You know, that seems a bit mean to me. It's like paying for massive.
Usually your children as well, you know.
Well, yeah, let's not get Abrahamic about this.
Yeah. So the next you know, somewhat problematic point is the unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
So the notion that if you are clear, you will never get a cold, which is an impossible expectation, and is assumed, you know,
just need to pay to do the clearing course again, mate.
Right.
Yeah, and it's your fault, right? So
you're not clear enough.
Yeah, and you can have
semi-transparent now, but
or you can feel like you're a fraud, or you can feel guilt, or you can feel like the emperor's new clothes, where you're the only one that actually still has colds, but everybody still has colds, but nobody
else stays at home, as Boris Johnson recommends.
Yeah,
but not to Dominic Cummings, as we've pointed out elsewhere.
Yeah, but it's not just cold; it's all sorts of illnesses, I think, with Scientology. But
I've got a great. Dianetics has asthma, bursitis, short-sightedness. We get through to an history of man. He claims raising the dead, leukemia, cancer. Using this material, you can do anything.
There you go. So
look, I'll tell you what, my favorite one, Helena OBrien in Dianetics in Limbo. Helena OBrien headed Hubbard's organization through 1952-53. She was the head of the Hubbard Association of Scientologists. It had not become international at that time, which would be the next development. So she arranged the Philadelphia doctorate course, the end of 52 into 53. And she looked after the whole show. And she said that the Philadelphia organization, where Hubbard lodged for a little while to do the doctorate course, where in 6 weeks of listening to Ron Hubbard talking, you received a doctorate. So it's $500. It's not bad, is it? Yeah. What are you? I see you've got a DSCN. What does that mean? I'm a doctor of Scientology. I commend any Scientology you bring. But she said they put a big fishbowl on the counter for people to throw their glasses into. And a year went by, and there were no spectacles in the bowl. And Hubbard, to the end of his days, wore spectacles, though Dianetics, in 270 cases, had cured any deficiencies in eyesight. Pretty impressive. Ulcers, easy peasy. It's an engram that says, I've got an ulcer, with mucus in it. No, it's without mucus in it, isn't it? Because ulcers is when you don't have enough mucus in your stomach.
Yeah,
and Helicobacter pylori, nothing. You know.
Yeah, and the mucus, which is a weird, galanic medicine, kind of one of the four humors that flows through you. There's a lot, it's
phlegmatic, apathetic, and we said before melancholic black bile, which is the jejunum. And
there's yellow bile and blood.
Yellow bile is choleric, which means angry in temperament. Melancholia black cola, the word itself says you've got black bile, mate. That's what you're suffering from, isn't it? It's like having the blue devils or the blues.
So
then you've then got sanguine, which is blood. You've got, so there are four from which the tone scale of Scientology seems to derive. So there's another intricate connection here.
And it's also related to Chinese medicine, where you have this flowing of fluids. It's qi and but it's strange that it shows up in the mucus of a spirit of an alien that's inhabiting your body, that's passing you.
Is it any stranger than
ectoplasm? Come on.
Yeah, isn't it any stranger than dark matter, dark energy, and superstrings? You know, because I can't see what the superstring is meant to be tied to. And what about the 11-dimensional P membrane that collapsed into the Big Bang? That baffles me, you know.
Yeah. So this guilt, this blaming yourself whenever something bad happens, that's really not that's not healthy at all.
No.
No. And it's a way to have people, keep be ashamed, and it's just bad all around.
Yeah, and of course the belief in Scientology is that if something is wrong with you, it is because you are what is called a potential trouble source, which means you're a potential trouble source to Scientology. That is how the phrase comes about. And the idea is that any illness is because you are in connection, whether in the present or through a past connection, with somebody who is a suppressive person. And that is...
Which are supposed to be,
So why aren't you then?
It's one of the curious things that I do, in fact, have a suppressive person declare from Scientology. So I'm meant to be surrounded by ill and cowed people. So I'd just like to point out that when this boy came here 3 years ago, he's now a man actually, he was a boy then. When he came here 3 years ago, he was extraordinarily ill and had been for several years. And he moved in here, and within 3 weeks he was better. So I think I'm an anti-suppressive person.
And you are clear.
Yeah. Well, I am a clear.
There you go.
37876 is my number. I think that's right. And that's all bullshit. There were never 37,876. I actually found out about the one. I asked them at the organizations, how do you assign the numbers? And they go, we just get a huge batch of them.
Yeah. We just use the Nazi
exactly. When Hitler, how many members were there? Do you remember?
55.
There were 55 people. And he'd been sent by German military intelligence to infiltrate them. And how clever was that, And so he's number 555 on his membership card. They just added 500.
Yeah.
Because as David Gaiman said of Scientology, when asked how many Scientologists there were, he said 5 million. And guy I knew asked him, he said to David, who's head of public relations for 13 years, I think, in Scientology, for a long time, more than actually 15 years, a long time. And he was asked, where were the records that this had come from? And David Gaiman said, there are no records. I just worked it out that would be everybody that had ever read a Hubbard book or had an auditing session or what have you. There must be that many. And that was
be.
Okay. Well, it's the laboratory fact.
There you go. I thought that he would have said, no, I thought you meant in the galaxy. Oh, on Earth. Oh, a lot less.
Well, I mean, and the membership, I very much doubt the membership's ever been over 100,000. It's amazing that they're listed by Amazon as a religion. And you're going, there are more Jedi, there are more Pastafarians than there are Scientologists. And yet it is the fastest growing religion in the world, and it has been
for 70 years straight. But it's just been, its growth is in the rest of the galaxy mostly. Here it's going to catch up soon. So
well, I remember going to a talk in 1981 where Diana Hubbard promised that within a year we'd have cleared the whole planet. Wow. What we'd have cleared itself, she maybe should have defined a bit more thoroughly.
Maybe she defined a year differently.
Sense, reason, logic, expectation. I don't know what we were clearing it off.
So Scientologists wear hazmat suits to get attention and then go and put those pamphlets in places?
Well, or people who want to give Scientology a bad name. go in hazmat suits and put those things out, because I've been sent photographs of dumpsters packed with, the shop owners have taken the boxes of them and just thrown them in. So they're not even being recycled as paper. So they're an environmental hazard, and we should be very careful. In fact, I think probably the yellow ink on them is poisonous. Yeah, but it's only psychosomatically poisonous to people who have yellow in an engram.
Yeah,
and therefore are not clear, because then they wouldn't have engram.
Oh, they're opaque.
What happens is that someone gets a cold, which is something that's normal, or their eyesight, or some kind of a health problem.
Asthma, like David Miscavige, for example.
Yeah, and then they see that as a reason to believe that someone who that they know is
suppressive,
is behind their back against Scientology, right? So this fosters a paranoid disposition. You need to find out who is this bad person that I need to disconnect from to gain my health back, right?
Yeah.
And so you have this something that happens, even though it's random, right, or somewhat random, the cold or some medical problems that when they do show up, cause people to isolate themselves from the outside world of Scientology more and more.
Yeah,
so that's not good.
It's kind of like a COVID-19 response, isn't it? You isolate yourself within the group from the diseased people outside, the suppressive persons, such as myself, who want to destroy all life, by the way. That's my intention, according to me. As a suppressive person, I want to destroy all life. Given the chance, obviously.
You're only, what, 2% of the population, right? Or something, the
2.5% according to him. I mean, one of the interesting things is that the significant bulletin from Hubbard on this, which means that it's red ink on white paper, a bulletin. So it's part of the technical literature, which is to say the techniques, the ways of messing with your head. And it's called the Antisocial Personality, the Anti-Scientologist. So two ideas are conflated here immediately. And that's what Scientologists will call a suppressive person, but they don't necessarily know that the term antisocial personality is a psychiatric term. It was when Hubbard borrowed it. It still is. It's in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual.
The disorder is disorder. We used to be called psychopathy, right?
Yeah,
antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah, you'd be
what we call psychopathy or sociopathy.
You'd be a psychopath if you believed that it was something you were born with. You'd be a sociopath. You thought it was something society made. Then Robert Hare came along and said, no, psychopath is the bad stuff at the top. That's from 30 to 40 on my chart. And from 4 to 30, that's a sociopath. Having earlier explained it exactly as I just did. In Without Conscience in the 90s.
Unless you have the one characteristic, which is that you have no remorse, in which case you're also
you're
probably a psychopath.
Yeah, it's probably it's slightly likely that if you have no conscience, that unless of course you have some brain issue that means it might be a brain issue, and so on and round and round.
So what did antisocial personality mean back in 1950?
Well, this is not 1950. This is
that's right. This is the bulletin.
This is the mid-60s. By this time, we've had Hervey Cleckley's Masks of Sanity. He's think of the influence he had. That and the Three Faces of Eve, the idea of multiple personality. They both burst into the culture. The term psychopath, the first usage I traced, or the Oxford Dictionary, I think, was in the 1840s. But its meaning is really pretty much opened out by Cleckley. It's recognized during the First World War that there are certain soldiers who behave in a rather strange way, and they seem to get themselves assigned to hospital beds as a preferential thing. They find there are people who are malingerers. There's nothing wrong with them whatsoever. They're just pretending, and so they have to be shot. So then the psychopaths stopped doing it. But there was a class of patient that they were concerned about in the First World War. Then the ideas developed, and Cleckley in the 1940s, late 40s, publishes this book, and when I read it after Scientology, in my endeavor to understand where Hubbard had got ideas from and to understand Hubbard, which seemed relevant to that too, it did startle me to find that there was a powerful overlap between Cleckley's description and Hubbard's, but that Hubbard had avoided certain aspects, and then that could be psychosomatic, or it could have been a laboratory fact, and he added certain things. So there's an imbalance. It's the idea of taking a term, you know, it's like saying that we're going to call wearing the color red being a repturd, which is a word that I would never use to describe anyone, repturd. I think it's an odious word. In fact, when I came up with it, I thought, that is an awful thing to say. I'm a libtard. I would never call somebody a repturd because that would be politically incorrect. So, but if one were speculatively to say that anyone that wears red is a repturd, you've identified two categories that don't necessarily fit together. I know people who wear red who would most certainly not. I know libtards who wear red. You know, in fact, our whole bloody socialist party and all the communists wear red. So maybe the grand old party isn't quite what it seems to be. Maybe that red tie that the Don wears.
Better dead than red, right?
It's a kind of signal to the Russians, maybe.
And the hats. MAGA hats.
Yeah, the MAGA hats, all of that. It's all magical, mystical gang stuff. But so yeah, your illness comes from connection to a suppressive person. Viruses, as we've seen, are just engrams with mucus in them, and it's best to, you know, just stay at home. Don't go to the Scientology organization, where you might catch some engrams. And
half of the people who were there and left turned out to be SPs. So if they're 2% of the population, but 3/4 of the people who have left Scientology, that's a lot of.
And you see, I would go towards David Gaiman's numbers. I think 5 million might be a bit too many, but I did sit and squiggle with it a few years ago, and I reckon that probably about 3 million people have had either read a book, had some form of auditing, as they call it, or frauditing, as my friend Captain Bill Robertson called it, and he was still doing it to people. That, you know, about 3 million people. Although that amount of people, I would think that probably about 250,000 have in some way been affected, so that there'd be difficulty. I must also say I know people who had a very positive effect from some process or procedure, but that positive effect could be explained otherwise. So, for example, somebody who told me they were suicidal said that auditing had taken that condition away. I made the suggestion that now having the society of people and community, people to talk to, people you could give your money to, people you could work for, people who you give all your time to, people who
your life changes.
And you're too busy scrubbing the toilet with a toothbrush to even think about suicide anymore.
There you go. And of course, when you believe that the death is impossible, that we're all immortal beings, then it's just gambling on what kind of body you're going to get next time. So
no, there have been circumstances, most definitely, where Scientologists have killed themselves with a sure and certain expectation of the resurrection, as you know, with a new body. I also have met a number of people who didn't grieve the death of parents and you know, beloved friends, siblings, children even, because they had just dropped the body, and they'd come by again. And when they leave and kind of go, that might not be true, 20 years later,
that's
my mom's dead.
that's a lot of dissonance to have to overcome.
It is. It's terrible. So do you have anything else on this topic, or can
no, just stay safe, and viruses are actual the bacterial theory of the disease, or certain diseases, is not to be taken too lightly.
Of course, it's fundamental to osteopathy. Was it Frank Still, osteopathy? Is that his name?
Maybe, I'm not sure.
But he wrote a completely lying autobiography, very much like Hubbard. And he laughed at the idea of germ theory. It's like everything that's wrong with you is to do with the position of the bones in your spine, which now, come to think about it, makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I mean, there are many diseases. There's autoimmune, there's diabetes, there's all sorts of stuff. Germs, viruses and bacteria are a subset of the diseases, but none to be taken lightly. Yeah.
We agree with the some diseases part. It's the are said to be part. Because it seems to me that there is evidence of bacteria, because you can see.
Well, Scientology fundamentally is a sort of a thought creates reality kind of ideology, and
mind over matter.
That is incompatible with the bacterial, with the germ theory of disease. Because just imagine the germs not to be there, and you wouldn't, apparently before we found out about germs, right, 150, 170 years ago. There was no diseases because nobody could imagine
having them.
Yeah.
And at the other end, you have the idea in Scientology of the postulate, which means a basic philosophical premise in the real world, but a wish in Scientology. And you get this in Law of Attraction, The Secret, Christian Science, all over the place, prosperity Christianity. The idea that your willpower or your prayers, however you think of it, is what drives what happens to you. So in a universe of, it's like the Lords of Karma are keeping a careful written account. So that when a giant clam gives birth, if I've remembered rightly, it gives birth to about 2 billion, and all of which are eaten, almost all of which are eaten. But it's a giant clam, so it'd be like a giant clam burger if you could get one. But every one of those, every ant in every ant's nest, and every bacterium and every virus, if we accept that the viral form is a life form rather than something that becomes a life form, and there are arguments about that too. So we can exclude them. Every fungus, every archaea, that strange class of creature, every plant, every animal has some poor bugger writing in a book, and now it's just done this, and now it's just done this. And then all of them are getting together, and they're doing this in real time, with all of this information to make sure the right karma or right vipaka, if we're going to be honest about it, the reaction, not the karma or action, that the right vipaka gets that ant or bacterium or person. And when you start calculating that, that must be an incredible, that really does make you believe in God, that something could be created where for each ant, because watching one ant, that's going to keep you busy, isn't it? And then the whole nest, there must be far more Lords of Karma writing the Akashic records, as they're called, than there are things in the universe, or as many.
So it's the first clam's fault then? All this has happened?
Climb up.
Yeah.
And this, by the way, is nobody was meaning to make any pun about Scientologists being called clams. And the reason for that is that in your favorite, the first book you read, I think, Scientology History of Man, it says that we evolved from clams, which are called the boohoos or weepers. And that's the reason we have tears. It's nothing to do with cleaning our eyes or anything like that. It's because we're having re-stimulated the idea of having to get salt water out of our shells. And so I've never used the term clam to describe a Scientologist.
But just
let me just correct. I've never used the word repturd.
Let me just correct you. You said that in all those the secret or prosperity gospel, or it's that it's your willpower or that determines what happens to you. But in fact, it's your lack of willpower that determines what happens to you. Because if it was your willpower, then all the good things would have happened to you, but they don't.
Well,
which is your fault, which is because your willpower isn't pure enough, strong enough, whatever. So it's actually your lack, it's the faults in your willpower that determine what happens to you.
You don't have to correct me. You've heard me talking with somebody when we were in Paris, your friend there who believed in the law of attraction. And I put it to her that therefore everything bad that happens to you has happened because you've willed it. And she said no, that her mother had actually talked with somebody who had shown that that's not the case. You don't have to worry about that. And I said, could you explain that to me? And she went, well, no. But my mum told me, and she wouldn't tell me something that wasn't true.
Yeah.
So that's laboratory fact. Yeah.
Okay.
Bless her. Okay, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Yuval.
Thank you.
And Samuel. And me. And we'd
you.
also like to thank the audience. Oh, can you lift it up slightly? Lift the painting up slightly. Oh, yeah, sorry. Of course. Sound very bossy, don't it? It's terrible. Yeah. It's because I am very bossy. And we like to feature, this is Boris Johnson, who has now laid an egg. In the original, he hadn't. But that's
turn him around.
It's
turn
an
him around. Show his face.
It's an artistic trick. Yeah. Well, you just like to explain that you have to stay at home and go out. You have to go to work and not go to work. Go on public transport, but you must float to work because you must be 2 meters away from all of the birds while you're floating. Sine qua non.
Sine qua non.
We've been watching Mark Steele, excellent on YouTube. Mark Steele having a go at Boris. He does a thing about Trump that's just hilarious, which is basically like, it's like, you know, somebody says SpongeBob SquarePants has become president. And it seems unbelievable at first. But then people think, oh, well, when he becomes president, he'll become responsible. He'll do things that will make the world a better place. And they're tad optimistic. So, Dominic Cummings, the senior political advisor to Boris Johnson, the Premier of Great Britain, and the egg, which has been laid. And we think the egg will actually prove to be, Boris's Bojo has said that there will be a full inquiry into his incompetence in dealing with the COVID-19 virus. But now's not the right time. I think the right time will be when he's no longer Prime Minister. That's what I'm guessing. But and we'd also like to, you know, the bird sits here all the time. We might as well show the bird. This is a huichol bird. It's a piece of wood with beeswax on it and plastic beads bought by the huichol people in central Mexico. And it represents, all of their work, I think, represents to some extent a mescaline experience.
I think you're flipping me the bird right now.
Yeah, that's right, flipping the bird at you. It's a very beautiful thing. You can't hold it for very long because the beeswax melts and the things come off. But that's what that is, and it has a little podium there. Right, so this has been lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
I've got an ulcer.